Okay, good morning. Henk Kramer speaking here on behalf of Cadmatic. We are going to show you today a webinar about information management solution eShare. I hope that everyone can see my screen. According to the audience view, I have 99% of the people attending being able to view my screen, so the one person that can't see it needs to fix it himself, unfortunately. But to continue with the introduction. A quick, for the people that are attending that don't know Cadmatic, a quick brief introduction about the company. We are a software company for the marine design, plant design, and information management solutions part. We have software that is specifically suited for the design and production phases of the marine and offshore industries, but also for the plant design. A third pillar of our product portfolio is the information management part, and that is what we are talking about today. The need for information is pretty big. What we do with the information management solution is use the 3D model that you generate during the design and engineering phases to link that to your data sources in the company, so everybody in their own phase of the process has quick access to the information he or she needs. So it doesn't matter if you're in the design, detailed design phases, fabrication, build, or operation parts, you have a need for information, and the sooner you get the information, the quicker you do your work. That, of course, same thing in the plant industry. Today we will be focusing the demonstration on the marine part, but it of course works the same in the information management part for the plant industry. The product family, to introduce that quickly, what we are talking about today is eShare. Probably most of you are familiar with our e-browser portfolio. The e-browser is the viewer of Cadmatic. Ego is the mobile viewer of Cadmatic. We won't be talking about that today that much. We are briefly mentioning it in the demonstration, but the demonstration will be mainly focused on eShare. The HoloLens is an attachment to eShare, which uses a part of the model to augment that in the real world, which means that you have an overlay of a virtual model in the real world. We won't be talking about it today because it's pretty difficult to explain how it works if you don't have a HoloLens on you, but quickly explained, it's that you have a virtual model that you overlay in the real world, so it's like designing something in the engine room. The follow-up is something that we won't be mentioning today, but it's also part of the product family of the Cadmatic information management part. So to continue with the demonstration, I will quickly share another screen because we will be showing how eShare works.
Okay, what we will show today is our eShare module, our information management module. The information management module is based on a 3D model. The 3D model doesn't necessarily have to come from our software. In this case it is, but it can come from Aviva, Intergraph, Siemens, and we are looking into possibilities to integrate with different software packages as well. So most of the people are familiar with our e-browser module. eShare is, let's say, an e-browser module which is linked to different data sources in your company. It allows you to have the 3D model as a central access point for all the data that you need to do your work. So what I will show today is the viewer. So how it works is you can hover around, you can pan, the same thing as the e-browser module. You can navigate, you can have your scenes jump to one point and another, and of course you want to have the information. Just a simple left click gives you all the information that you would need on the right side. With a small I you can also hide the information that you don't want to see, and by clicking on it you see it everything. So just in order to prevent an overload of data, you click on the I, you just have the information that you said which is important. Now eShare is based on the e-browser technology. The e-browser technology is not just a viewer with the data, but allows you to get some more information by, for instance, measuring parts. So you click on something, you measure, you get all the information that you need. On the left upper part you see the distance in the XYZ coordinates as well, and it snaps to different items. We have the measurement functionality. We also have coordinates, so you can see immediately where you are, what a specific item is. Again, it snaps to several points, the center line of something, the corner of something, so you immediately have all the coordinates of where you are. You can examine a part, so you hover around it, and when it is not visible, it automatically X-rays it. What you also see here on the right bottom is a navigation pane. This navigation pane is based on the arrangement drawing that you generate when you create the model, and by simply clicking on it you go from one point to another. So let's say if I go to the wheelhouse, I just simply click on it and I'm in the wheelhouse. If I want to go to the aft of the vessel, I simply click on it, and by 2 clicks you're immediately at the position of where you are. In the e-browser we also have the clipbox functionality, the same thing we have in eShare. So with the clipbox you can easily say, okay, I would just want to clip parts of the vessel. And by having clipped the vessel, it is much easier to see what you are currently working on. This also works in the view by just a right mouse button. You can easily shift. Again, you have the coordinates of the frames that you are working on. And from the side, again, the coordinates, so you immediately see what you are clipping on. It snaps to the nearest main point, but you can also manually type it with what you have in mind. Now for the demo I would like to continue with a couple of additional functionalities, because the e-browser is, like we said, just the viewer. There are a couple of differences between the e-browser and eShare. Namely, if you left mouse click on one thing, you have the information on the right side, which is the same as an e-browser, but what you immediately see is that there are things below it as well. If I go, for instance, to this elbow, on the top part you have the same information as you would have in the e-browser model, but below that you have data which comes from different software packages, and this is the strength of eShare. eShare connects to different data sources within your company. The data source can be any kind of database. I will quickly show what kind of adapters we have. We have, for instance, a document management adapter, database adapter. A database adapter can be any kind of SQL server, Oracle server. We can have ODBC and OLEDB connections, so we can connect to just about any imaginable database. The way the database connection is set up is fairly easy. You just have a connection string, then it runs a query, and by using that query we get the data that we immediately show on the right side. Apart from showing the data on the right side, we can also link to several systems. So for instance, we have set it up with a hypothetical PLM system. Clicking on the URL link, we immediately open the specific part in the PLM system. This PLM system is just an online system, so it can also be a system within your company or outside your company. As long as it has a URL, we can connect to it. And what is a very big benefit of eShare is that we can immediately link to drawings. So we have set it up to an arrangement drawing, and this specific elbow is also on a spool drawing. if I click on the arrangement drawing, I immediately zoom in on the specific part that I clicked on. This also works the other way around. So if I here, for instance, click on the spool part, I immediately zoom in on this specific spool. So navigating around it, I can immediately see where I am, what I'm doing, and vice versa. If I click on it, I zoom in on the part. These links are automatically generated by eShare. As long as it is a DWG with readable text, a PDF with readable text, or a GDN file, DGN file, then eShare can recognize the text, match it to the model, and generate the hyperlink when importing the file. So when you open the actual file, eShare scans everything on the file and matches it with a hyperlink. What you can also see is that these hyperlinks are colored. They are colored according to, in this case, a status tracking part. I will come later in the demonstration to the status tracking. This coloring is also a feature in eShare which allows you to easily see what is happening in the company, what is happening in the model, and also use the drawings as a visual reference tool to check what is going on. This, for instance, I can quickly show. The link highlighting in this case is colored according to the status. Now I show the equipment status, the pipeline status, and the valve status on the drawings. Let's say that I want to show the model, so color according to the model, if an object is found, if an object is not found, or an attribute is not found. So in this case, I want to see how much of what is on the drawing is actually in the model. I click on apply, go to the document. In this case it's 777-001. I reopen that same document, 777-001, and immediately you see that all the hyperlinks are colored differently. Now most of it is green, which makes sense because all of the parts are in the model. For the demo we have set up also a couple of parts which are missing. So in this arrangement drawing, for instance, if I click on it, the group is not found in the 3D model. If you link, for instance, your P&ID diagrams, you can immediately see from the P&ID with the coloring if a part is in the model or not. So you can see how much of your actual project is filled. If you go back to the hyperlink and you color according to the status again, I color according to the 3 statuses below, click on apply. Again, reopen the drawing. And the hyperlinks are changed back again. So with this purple coloring, you have a legenda on the right upper part of the drawing, and you can see the equipment if they are installed, approved, purchased, pressure test, etc. Now what is also different from eShare and the eBrowser is that you have on the left side not just the hierarchy, but you also have 2 drop-down menus, the top one and the bottom one. The top one is a visual style drop-down menu which allows you to see the model in different styles. The bottom one is the hierarchy, so what you change in the visual style you can also make a hierarchy for. So what I would like to show is that, for instance, the visual style can easily be used to show different attributes. So the attributes, what is in the model, everything on the top right, or outside the model, coming from different data sources, is something that could be used as an attribute to make a visual style or coloring for. So for instance, if I would like to show the hull plate material, in one click I can easily see what the plate material is of all the parts in the model. I can also make a hierarchy for that. So the hull plate material, I would only like to see everything which is made of NVA, NVA3 and aluminum. Now I see only the parts that are made of aluminum. Same thing for, let's say, the plate thickness. The same thing applies for the material. So let's say the same thing applies for the plate thickness. So for instance, if I click on the hull plate thickness, I immediately see in all colors what the thicknesses of the plates are. Again, I can make a hierarchy for that. So if I only want to show the plates which are 20, 22, 25 and 30 millimeters thick, then in one overview you see exactly the selection that you made. This also works for any kind of attribute. So the corrosion protection, for instance, everything which is galvanized or not galvanized, the specification, and also the statuses that I will show later. And what you can also show is data from different kind of software packages. Now for the demo we have set it up to link it to, for instance, the plate nesting system. And with the plate nesting system we read directly from the SQL database what the actual status is of a specific part. So I will go to hull block number 103. Now you see a normal bottom section of the vessel, and I would like to see the nesting information. By clicking on the nesting information, immediately you see a couple of different colors, and the colors on the bottom has a legenda which shows if a part is imported, fully nested, fully cut, partially cut or uncategorized. Now the fully cut and fully nested means that the parts have either been nested or cut. Partially cut means that a standard part, for instance this standard bracket, has partially been cut, namely two of the parts and one of this part exist. There are in total 10 parts, and the one at the end means that the nesting has been cut. So the VA006 and VA010, 7 of these parts are not yet cut. So the production workers immediately know in one glance if the parts they are looking for even exist or if they are coming. I can also make a hierarchy based on the nesting name. So for instance, I know that the nestings VA006 and VA007 are coming, and I want to know which parts they contain. So by clicking on them I immediately see all the parts in these two nestings. Again, if I open hull block 103, I now know that the parts do exist, or at least have been nested. They are coming. I want to go and produce them. Again, the link to the documents is also available for structure. So if you click on the part, you have the documents. Opening them, I immediately see the drawing for the structure. Again, the hyperlinks are colored. The hyperlinks on the parts mean they exist in the model. So if a part changes and you have a drawing which is not updated for one reason or another, you immediately see a red box, and that means that something is a mismatch in the model and the drawing, so you immediately know that something needs to be updated. Now, what is a big benefit of using digital drawings is that you can make a link back to the model, which means that if something is missing on the drawing, if a dimension is missing or a label or an annotation, production doesn't have to doesn't have to call engineering to update the drawings, replot the drawings, send them to the production, make sure the old documents are gone. They can easily get the information themselves from the model. By simply clicking on the part, you immediately go in the 3D model to the part. Since I already explained that the measurement functionalities work in the eShare, you can immediately measure the distance between the parts, or you can get the information which is needed in order to know what the size of the part is, for instance, or what the location of the part is. So instead of calling engineering and updating everything, you can easily get the easy things themselves. Now, if a drawing needs to be updated, then still it is very easy to do, because you know what the part is. You call the engineering, you ask them to update the drawing, they update the drawing, simply publish the drawing again. You synchronize either your computer or your tablet, and you immediately have the updated drawing. So you don't have to wait for someone to print it, to plot it, and to bring it physically to you. Everything is done real time and very fast. Now you have all the information that you would need in order to do your work. So then you would like to use eShare as a communication tool between your different departments. So the whole block we are going to produce, and in order to communicate between the different departments, we have set up a status tracking tool in eShare, which allows you to set the status of a specific part, so everybody knows the actual status of the vessel at any given time. So if I show the structure status in both the visual style and the hierarchy, you can see that for the demonstration I have set up a quite colored block with a lot of different statuses to show you a hypothetical workflow which a part needs to follow. That status is completely user definable, so you can define yourself what a part needs to have, what status it can have, and in which order it needs to follow it. For the demonstration, I have set it that a part goes from the engineering for approval, then it can be released for production. If it is released for production, it can be prefabricated, pre-assembled, it goes into the section, then the part is welded, QC approves or disapproves it, and a part can always be set on hold or redesign. With the workflow, what I show over here is that you can see that a part which is undefined can only be set for approval can only be set for production, so it needs to follow the actual workflow. When it is released for production, not all parts have to be prefabricated, so they can skip these two, go immediately on board of the vessel, and from in section it needs to be welded, and QC always has to approve or disapprove it. Now a part can always be set on hold or be withdrawn for redesign, so if something happens, if some urgent case is there, you can immediately override the situation. Now I save this and I go back to my model, which means that if, for instance, I'm working on this part of the vessel and this faceplate is now released, I can multi-select multiple faceplates at once, so I can release them for production or at least send them to the project manager for approval. And you can immediately see that all the colors are changed, so everybody knows that the parts are now sent for approval. Again, it is next stage is released for production. Immediately the color changes, so everybody now knows that the parts are released for production. Production takes over. They pre-assemble the part, or they prefabricate the part in this case, because it needs to be bended. And when it is prefabricated, it goes on board of the section. Again, with the coloring, you immediately see what is going on. Now this is also a to-do list for the workers, because everybody can use the hierarchy as their own to-do list. Let's say that the welder that goes on board of the vessel wants to know everything which is in the section which he needs to weld. He can just hide everything and only show all parts that are in the section. Now I have some more, but these are just the 3 that I used for the demo. So he has done his work. He can multi-select all the parts that he has worked on and set it to welded. Now quality control comes by and they make their own workload. They make their own to-do list. They click on it and they see all the parts that are welded. I will hide the parts that are in section because that's not for their to-do list. So immediately they see what the parts are that are welded. They have checked it. Again, they can simply multi-select by a drag and drop box all the parts at once, and they can approve it or disapprove it. Now in this case I've approved everything, but let's say that these 2 parts are disapproved, so I can override the status, say hey, there's something going on, put them on hold and disapprove them. Again, immediately the color changes to disapproved. Welder comes in the morning and he wants to see what he has to do, so he checks in section, and of course he checks what is disapproved. So he can immediately see in blue the parts that are new in the section, and QC has disapproved things, so he needs to check his work. With this structure status, the workflow is direct and immediate, so that means that everybody always knows the actual status of the vessel. Production can use it as a communication tool with engineering, and engineering as a communication tool with the production guys. So if something is going on, if an owner request comes in and they need to withdraw a part for redesign, they can just multi-select the entire selection of what they want to withdraw for redesign, override the status, and immediately communicate that that they have withdrawn it for redesign purposes. So the other way around, it also works that engineering immediately sees when something is going on the shipyard. So if a part is placed on board of the vessel and they see that it has been welded, if they then change it, they know that it will cost quite a bit of money. This works for structure, but of course this also works for outfitting. If I go back to the engine room, I can show in the visual style also the pipe workflow. This pipe workflow I have set up in a similar way. If I go to the status tracking and show the pipe workflow, you can see the parts that are in design for approval, approved by the project manager, rejected, released by production, released for production by engineering, approved, purchased, delivered, installed, on hold. Again, a similar workflow as structure. Everything needs to follow a certain step in order to go to the next, but it can always be put on hold. So that also means that if you make a mistake in the status tracking, you can put it on hold and then send it back to the old status or the correct status. So if I go to the model, in one glance I immediately see the status of the engine room. If a part is in design for approval, approved by the project manager, etc. So you can see that these are the spools that have been purchased. This is approved by the project manager. This is sent for approval. And here they are still designing. Similar to the arrangement drawings, you can make a link to the spool drawings. So the production people also have in the model a link to the drawing, and the same thing from the drawing back to the model. So if I click on the link for the valve, I again see the valve in the 3D model, have all the information on the right side, and if I need to measure something, I still have the ability to measure it. Now if something is wrong in this 3D model, similar to what you have in the e-browser, we have the markup tool. So let's say that this valve that I just clicked on is the wrong type. I can add a markup, have all the drawing functionalities that you would need. Wrong valve needs to be a butterfly valve. Change a valve type. Now the creator is in this case me. Status is new. Importance is normal. I can actually measure something here as well. And I can put some annotations to it if needed. And then save it. Now very useful about the markup tool is that you can compare the situation from the old to the new, and you immediately go to the specific part by clicking on the markups. So if I go to the home, what you see when opening eShare is the model part, documents part, administration part, and on the bottom all the markups. If I click on the markup, I immediately go to the markup in the position of the vessel where it is created. If, let's say, the document is updated or the model is updated, then you can compare the new situation to the old situation. So by showing the current situation, it is exactly the same. I haven't changed it yet, but you can see the color differences to the original situation, and I can make a mixed view, combine the two. So if the part is actually changed, then you would see the change. Now, I have changed this part. I can make my comments. Valve is changed. And you can also see the change history on the left side. All is saved in the model. These markups I can also visually show where they are. So what you don't see at the moment are the positions of the markups. Let's say if I want to show the markups, I only want to show the new markups. So in the middle of the sky you see a button, and if you click on it you see the actual markup. Again, if I click on it, I see the markup. Now I can set the status to approved or done. I haven't done that because I wanted to show only the new ones. And what you can now see is that this markup is gone. Simply because I set the filter for the markups, I only want to show the new markups. So everything which is approved, disapproved or done, I don't want to show. If I show what is done, then again it is back. Now these documents that you can link to the actual model don't necessarily have to be spool drawings, ISO drawings. You can link any imaginable drawing to it. So let's say if I go to a cooling room and I click on a box cooler, you can also link the supplier info of the box cooler to the actual model. So if you have manuals, if you have installation drawings, you can link it to it as well. So if I click on it, I go to the PDF drawing, in this case of the box cooler. so I have all the information of the components in here as well. The equipment management data, so I have all the information from the components in here as well. Again, information on the right side can come from multiple software systems. In this case, the equipment management data comes from an Excel list, and I will quickly show how easy it is to create a link to that. If I go to the adapters and data sources, I have a couple of Excel adapters linked to it. You can simply link the entire Excel file to it. It can be stored anywhere on your local C drive, on your network drive. It doesn't really matter. As long as eShare can access it, it can automatically open it, reload it, and show you all the data that you want to have. So if I edit this file, for instance, it has a location, it has a name of the worksheet, you set the row number that it has to start reading, and then it has all the columns, and from these columns I would like to show only the equipment management data and the status, and that means that I only tick these two boxes if it is visible. So if I, for instance, want to show the equipment function or the drawing name, I save it, I go back to the model, I click on it, and then I have the two additional fields that are stored in the Excel list. So it is very easy to customize your adapters. It is very easy to make new ones and to modify it. Everything is simply done by queries to all the databases. For instance, the nested cutting data is simply a connection string to an SQL server, in this case a server on my own laptop. It has a username and a password, and if I want to have the nesting info, what it does is when you click on a specific part, it runs a query. This query is simple SQL format, so any kind of user with a little SQL knowledge can create the queries themselves. So what eShare does is have your 3D model linked to any kind of data system within your company to make one accessible portal for all the information that you would need in order to do your work. So for the status tracking of the pipe workflows, let's say that we're going to modify a couple of parts. These pipelines are now for approval, and we are going to approve them by the project manager. So that means all of them are colored blue. If I go to the documents, you can see that there are just a couple of colored links like I previously explained. And that is because the legenda only covers the equipment status, valve status, and not yet the pipe workflow. So what we are going to modify today is that I would like to see the pipe workflow on the drawings. So I would like to see on the drawings the actual status of the systems. I will go to the administration part, manage the documents, and the status trackers over here are currently the equipment status, pipeline status, and valve status. Now I want to add the pipe workflow, click on apply, and again reopen the drawing, and then you see on the right side the pipe workflow, if it is for approval, approved, released, etc. If I then go to the actual view, then you can now see the parts we have modified. So clicking on this part, if I then open the drawing, you can immediately see that the color is now blue. What I briefly explained is that the text needs to be text, because if it is text, then eShare can actually read it. So if I search it, I can actually search through the drawings as well. 352001, instead there are only 10 hits, so I can easily scroll through all 10 of them if I'm just looking for one specific part. The search functionality works on drawings, but we also have a search functionality in the 3D model. If I want to search for the same part, 352001, you can see that eShare automatically gives you some clues of all the parts that are in the model. If I search for it, you can see that there are 185 objects. Now I can examine all the objects, which means that I see in the model highlighted all the 185 objects that I have selected. I can also narrow the search a little to make it more specific. There's an A. If I search, I have only 32. If I click on one specific part, then I see the specific part. I can easily scroll through the search list in the 3D model as well. So instead of going back to the search list, clicking on the next one in the model, I can easily go to the next search. So scrolling through all the objects that I am looking for. Now this is just a simple search, but you can make very long queries with it. So if I have, for instance, an attribute, ISO equals 353, or exists ISO doc name equals 352, search, then I get a list, and this query you can make as long as you would like. You can also search through the markups. That is something that the markups that you have shown at the bottom, easily searchable. So if you click on, for instance, all the markups I want to search them through, type is markup, and I want to see, for instance, my markups modified by, and you see the 5 markups that I have made. Now I only want to see the new ones, for instance, equals new. Then you see my to-do list for today, which was the valve that is missing that I created during the demonstration. Now I have done this, done, status done, and in the search list there are no smart points for any of the criteria, which means that I have nothing left to do for today. Of course, anyone can change it back and set the markups to not true, still needs to be changed, set the importance to high, new, and the author is in this case someone using my computer, Mr. Yuri Orlov. And when it is overridden, you can immediately see that the status is back to new, valve missing. Again, if I click on it, you see on the left the change history needs to be changed. I can set it to done again, and my to-do list will be empty. On the right side is of course completely configurable and controllable by the administrators. Also the statuses and the hierarchies on the left side are completely controllable by writes. So what I will show next is how the write system works in eShare. So in the project we have users and groups. Now the users can be part of a group, so we can add simple users to the project, and we can add groups to the project, and in the system administrator we can set for each user if they are part of a certain group. So I can change the name over here. In the groups I can have a hypothetical group of structural engineers, and I can simply add users to that group. So if I add myself to the structural group, I'm part of it. If I then go back to the model, in the group we have structural engineers, project managers, production workers, piping engineers. I am part of the structural engineers, and let's say that I want to control who's allowed to see and to do what. So per adapter we can set the rights, who's allowed to see and who's allowed to modify certain things. So if I click for instance on the Nestex cutting part, I as a structural engineer would like to see of course what the status of it is, but only the project manager is interested in seeing the certificate number, in this case the Lloyd certificate number. So if I click on the Lloyd certificate number and I edit it, then it is allowed for user groups, piping engineers, production workers, the groups that I have over here, and the structural engineers are not interested in seeing it, so you save it. In this case only the project manager is allowed to see it. Now in this case, because I'm a system administrator, I can't show it in the demonstration, but that would mean that if I then go to the whole block number 103 and I click on the part, that the certificate number in this case will be hidden for anyone but the project managers. So any of the data fields that you have coming from different systems can be controlled by the groups. A user can of course be part of multiple groups, so you can have key users that are allowed to see, for instance, piping information that a standard structure user is not interested in. So we have a couple of systems that are still for approval, and let's say me as a project manager, I would like to check the collisions of everything that is sent for approval. Now I click on the collision control, so I tick for approval and I want to send it to everything, or actually the entire model. I can test it for collisions, collisions and contacts, collisions, contacts and clearance violations. So if I have contacts I can set an accuracy limit, and clearance violations, if a minimum clearance is set, then you can easily set the minimum clearance yourself here. Now I only want to check for collisions. I can still set the rules that it has to check. If it can ignore, for instance, soft collisions, which means that it hits insulations or service space, include containments, only the visible objects, or include collisions inside systems. Now I just want to ignore the last part, and then I will, and when I click on it you see all the, I want to hide everything which is uninvolved in collisions, so that means that you see all the collisions. Now you see here that one of the pipes is hitting the grating. There's no hole cut, so either a hole needs to be cut or something needs to happen. So in this case the project manager rejects it, and again immediately the status is changed. So instead of going through each and every of the pipe drawings, you can easily see all the collisions in the model in one glance. Same thing over here, it hits the bracket, so I reject it. And the flange which is hitting the bulkhead, so either a hole needs to be cut or something needs to happen, so the project manager can reject it, or in this case, well, you say we're going to cut the hole on board anyway. I want to still approve it. So with the collision control you can easily go through the entire model and check what kind of errors there are. Now these markups are saved in the database, but of course if you're working with a customer that is familiar with the e-browser, they've probably used the markup functionality already, and they can save the e-browser markups as an EBX file. That EBX file you can still import, so if you have an EBX file coming from a customer, you can simply import it and then store it in your database. So all the markups that you have made prior to using eShare are simply importable and you can continue working. And on the left side you can easily say that, okay, all the parts that are rejected by the project manager, I check the collisions with clearance violations. And then when I hide everything which is uninvolved in collisions, again I immediately see all the collisions. So here two pipes are actually too close to each other. So what you can then again easily do is to add a markup pipes too close, and if you need to measure the distance between the two, then of course you can place all those measurements. Too close, pipes are too close. Okay. So again, if I go to the main navigation pane, I click on it, I see that the pipes are too close, I see the current situation, mixed view, everything is now changed, is okay enough, status approved, done, and the markup is saved again. Now these hyperlinks follow a certain set of rules, and like I said in the beginning, the hyperlinks need to be readable text, so the PDF or DWG file need to be readable text in order for eShare to scan it. And when it is readable text, if it is a certain format, you can make the hyperlink. So how that works is if I show the document handling, the drawing type for the piping, then I have set here, for instance, a rule that the SFI code needs to be numbers 0 to 9, total 3, followed by a dash, followed by an IDN code of 3 numbers and then a letter. If the same for the isometric drawings, you have here the SFI code, 3 numbers, followed by a dash, followed by an IDN code of 3 numbers, a letter and an SPN code. If it is a certain format, then following these rules, it generates a hyperlink. And that hyperlink is then linked to something in the model. Like I showed, if you click on it, you go to the model, so the same thing. If it is 3 numbers, a dash, 3 numbers and a letter, it knows that it is this specific part, so it matches it to the model. Click on it, I go to the specific part, to the link. Now what is a very good feature of it is that when you make a printout of the position, is when you use Ego, you go immediately to that position in the model. So in this case there is something going on over here. You make a print of it, you make a scan of it, and you're immediately in the position that you are in the model. With Ego you can then see what is going on. You can also use the Ego tablet to measure. But what is a good feature about the Ego tablet is that you go to the actual position, because in the markup tool we have a current situation, we have a mixed situation and an original, but we also have a photo situation. So if you make a link with the photo to the actual position, you can have the photo of the actual view in the project combined with the 3D model, so the production guys and the engineering guys can communicate with photos and the model to show in real life how it is going on. Now these adapters you only have to set once, because once you have created an adapter, you can set it in a project, and the project you can use as a template for other projects. So what I show if I go to the system administration is that the Wärtsilä demo project is the demo project that I'm currently using, is that you have two different projects, namely the HoloLens Marine demo and a bulk carrier, that use the Wärtsilä demo project as a master. So if I change the adapter in the Wärtsilä demo, the two others have it as a template and they get the adapters as well. Also, now this export is easy readable text, so the entire text I can easily show in a text editor, and then you see all the adapters, how they work, how they're configured, so you can quickly just copy one to another. So if you just want to copy one specific part, then I click on the other project, import config, and you just paste the text over here. And with eShare you can easily make submodel division rules. This is specifically made for the HoloLens, because the HoloLens is an addition in addition to eShare. You can easily see parts of the model in the HoloLens, because the HoloLens currently doesn't have the memory to store the entire model. You can make a subdivision of a specific system. So if you want to see, for instance, the filling of the engine room with piping systems before there's a piping on board, you can select the attribute, you can make the rules, and then you import it in the HoloLens, and you can use the HoloLens, which is a standard functionality, as an addition to eShare.
That was a quick introduction of the eShare information management solutions. I would like to continue with the questions and answers of today. We have had a couple of questions coming in already. Those have been answered. So the people, if you have on the right a question pane, you can read a couple of those answers. We have a Q&A panel of today consisting of myself. I introduced myself already as the Senior Sales Manager, but we also have Mikko Ulikainen present. He's the product owner of information management. So he's actually the one responsible for the development part of eShare. If there are any questions, please use the panel on the right where you can ask the questions to us. We have the demonstration project live, so if you have something that you would like to see, if it is possible, then we can show that as well. A question, by the way, that has been answered also and asked a couple of times. The webinar is recorded. After the webinar, we will send a download link to everybody, so you have plenty time to review the webinar in your own time. You can also show it to colleagues, of course. And then we have a question coming in from Arthur. Can the e-browser be replaced by eShare? Simple answer is yes. There's only one functionality that differs between eShare and eBrowser. In eBrowser, it is easily, you can actually, let's say, compare two eBrowser models. So if you have a hierarchy throughout the process that you export an eBrowser every day, and you compare those two models, that is a functionality that is not possible in eShare, because eShare only is run on the latest model. So the markups are stored and that you can compare, but you cannot compare it to an older eBrowser model. All the other functionalities that eBrowser has are included in eShare, and eShare has, of course, quite a lot more that we've shown during the demonstration. Then a question coming in from George. How do we use it when initiating a project, or is it just for work in progress project? Well, again, good question, I would say. You can start without having a model. Of course, the most functionality from eShare comes linking the 3D model to databases. So that means that you have to have a 3D model. However, you can already start a project with just a simple set of drawings. So if you start your PNIDs, you can have the PNIDs already in eShare. The moment you start with a model and something is erected, something is designed, then you have the live link already. So you don't actually need to have a model in order to start a project in eShare. Then a question coming in from Nikolai: is it possible to load markups made in eBrowser? Yes, that is entirely possible. So you have the eBrowser markup functionalities, the EBX files that you can, of course, import, and that I can show if I just go to my project. Let me see how to share. There, eShare is, and Mikko is now also unmuted, so you have someone on the background, my colleague.
Thank you, and hello to everyone.
Yes, all markups. Oh. Upload markups. So the EBX files you can simply import.
And this import works in a nice way that whatever you import is not duplicated. It's knowing that you have imported something previously and it will not duplicate it. And you can actually build a workflow with this. If you have a subcontractor which is using only eBrowser, you can export selected markups from the search as an EBX file and send to the subcontractor, who can view and comment them with normal eBrowser and send back the EBX file, and you can upload it back and you get all the changes that were made with eBrowser back to eShare. So there is a nice workflow integration also with eBrowser users available.
And then we have a question coming in from Gerko. Will there be an option to reload drawings? Now you close and open. Yes, that is something that will be there indeed, because indeed I'm closing and reopening them. There will be some sort of a refresh functionality. Question coming in from Arthur: can eShare work with Autodesk Vault 2019? That I am not entirely sure what Autodesk Vault is, because I'm not familiar with it. Mikko, do you know?
Well, I think it's the web application from Autodesk where you can place your drawings, for example. But so far we haven't had any case where this would have been needed. So honestly said, I don't know if we can work, but anything and everything is always possible. We are usually solving these case by case if there's some specific integration needs.
Then another question coming in from Nikolai. Can I open documents in docx, text, or DWG format? Well, docx and text not, but DWG yes. So what we can read is DWG, DGN, and PDF. When we create the hyperlinks, we need to have readable text. So it can't be plotted, it needs to be readable text. If you link PDF documents that don't have readable text, you can still link the documents to something, but then we can't read the actual text, so we can't make the hyperlinks in it. And Konrad asks a question. You've mentioned REST API in the next version. Can you tell something more about it? That I will ask Mikko to answer.
Yes, so we have had the approach to have this kind of generic configurable integration modules that we call adapters, which means that in many cases when you have systems in your shipyard, for example, there is no need for a specific integration project where someone would do some development work, but you can take one of those generic adapters and configure it to read suitable data from your other systems. And for example, databases is quite simple scenario. We have an adapter to read from different databases the data that you need. But in some scenarios, database is not accessible, or you have some end user license agreement stopping you from reading there, or the database is not having the data in the form that you want to have it. And for that reason, in next version, we will have a generic REST API adapter, which you can configure to read data from very versatile set of different REST APIs. So you basically configure how to query the information and how to interpret it and pass it on to eShare. So with this REST API adapter, we are able to support integrations to quite many systems than previously, just without custom development with I wouldn't say simple, but with the configuration still. So that makes many scenarios nicer when our technical personnel can, for example, configure for proof of concept something to already read data from third-party systems to eShare.
Perfect. Then another question coming in from MS Holding. How are statuses you set in eShare rely link on document revisions? Well, the document revisions, if you talk about the revision control, we only link to the latest revision. So when you publish a drawing to eShare, you can we link to that document, and that is only the latest revision, because the model is also only the latest revision. The statuses you set in eShare, they're controlled in eShare, so they don't have anything to do with the document revisions. That is something which is completely controlled in eShare. If you have the hyperlinks to the model, if you have those colored by the statuses, that is something which again is controlled in eShare. So if you make a publish to PDF from eShare with the document hyperlinks colored, that is something which again is always the latest status. Then a final question coming in from Christian Cardoso. So this is using the product information correct. Nice one. This is what we are expecting from Cadmatic. This reduces the time taken for design. Oh, thank you very much. That sounds like a very big compliment. So that is, of course, what we are aiming for. Thanks a lot for this product. I will answer the questions quickly also in the chat, because I think the export will then include all the answers. If there is a final question coming in, I will answer that as well. Otherwise, we are wrapping up the webinar. Nothing yet. Then I would like to thank you for your time. I said that in the beginning already, but a download link will be sent after the webinar, so you have plenty time to review it afterwards. If you have any questions after the webinar and you think of something, you can always contact me. My email is on the website. Short is henk.kramer@cadmatic.com. If you have technical questions that I can answer, I will ask Mikko, of course, but please, if regarding the webinar, if you have any questions coming in, just contact me. I would like to thank you for your time, and again, have a good day. We will be in touch.